What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Five Pod, episode number 63. I'm, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello, and guess who's back? Back again. Copestick's back. Tell a friend. Cope, how are you? And more importantly, how are you feeling? And also, thankful that you're back, too.
Yeah, I am feeling so much better. For those that don't know, I went to an urgent care about a week and a half ago, and they told me that they thought I had bronchitis. Still wasn't feeling well after a week. I went to a patient first. I got a chest X-ray, and I had pneumonia. So been out of work the last 2 weeks, unfortunately. Getting a lot of rest, not feeling very well. Feeling a lot better though. Definitely feeling a lot better today and yesterday. Not coughing as much. Don't have as much shortness of breath as I do with the pneumonia. So the meds are working. Been going out on walks just to get some fresh air, get my lungs going a little bit. So feeling a lot better. Feeling a lot better for sure. Shout out to Aaron Bracey for filling in last
Yes.
episode, very aptly covering the triple header that I tried to sit through. I was there for about half of it. Of course, I leave at the worst time. I leave right before Penn and LaSalle go to overtime. But
Yeah.
Kyle, you were sitting right next to me. I was going through it. I was trying to fight through it to stay at the triple header. Um, but I was feeling like crap in one game. But I felt like I was gonna pass out in the media room eating there. So yeah, unfortunately had to leave the triple header, but did stay for the Drexel Villanova upset. Stayed for what was a really good Penn and LaSalle game. Feels like forever ago. That was the last time I was kind of covering the Big Five. Um, but yeah, we're back. I'm not gonna ramble on anymore. Let's talk some hoops. Good to be back. Feeling a lot better.
And thankfully you are back. And yeah, shout out to Aaron Bracey for filling in. Aaron was awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed him. He will definitely have to be back on at some point soon with you too, Cope. Definitely a three-way discussion next time. But happy to have you back and happy to talk some Big Five hoops with you. It's been a minute. So why don't we get into it? A little different this episode. Obviously, we missed a little bit of time here. But there also hasn't been an insane amount going on in these last, week or so. So we're gonna do a little different approach, more general. We're gonna each pick a team that we have not discussed which team we're picking yet, so it will be genuine. We're gonna each pick a team that we've been impressed with, that we think's been doing well, that should be talked about. We're also gonna pick a team that we have not been as impressed with, and maybe need to pick it up a little bit. Can mention a player too if we want, and then we'll get into some weekend action coming up here as well. So Copestick, why don't you give me a team in the last, week and a half or so since you've been on the shelf here that's really caught your eye, really caught your attention?
So I'm gonna go with Villanova because I did watch them. Was not feeling very well, but I did watch them play last Saturday against UCLA. Really, really lengthy break they have now. They're not going to play until Wednesday at Creighton. Really, really tough place to play in the Big East. I would say maybe besides Providence or UConn, probably the toughest place to go play in the Big East. Very, very like weird geographic setting. It's like on a Wednesday night, Villanova's going to fly to Omaha and they're going to play a game there. Creighton, of course, last night, how about they got boat raced in they didn't even play in Las Vegas. They actually played in Henderson by 5 minutes from Uncle Tommy at the Dollar Loan Center
Shout out
yeah,
Uncle Tommy.
outside. Um, they lost to UNLV, played a neutral site game there. I mean, it's basically yes, it's home for UNLV, but they kind of played way off campus in the suburb of Henderson. Um, but I want to talk about the UCLA game because Mick Cronin, that like the defense is going to be his team's calling card. They had a size advantage over Villanova, freshman center, Ade Mara. Really, really big dude. Played very, very well. Got a couple boards, scored a couple buckets for them. But Villanova, especially in the second half, they figured it out offensively. They knocked down some shots. It was another cold game from them from the 3-point line. They were able to knock down some shots in the second half. Hakeem Hart played probably his best game as a Wildcat. Brendan Housen came in, hit two big threes in the second half. TJ Bamba had a huge play off a missed shot. He got the rebound and had a reverse layup. Really, really good second half from Villanova. They needed that win. For whatever reason, they can't beat the teams in the Big Five. They dropped a close one at Kansas State that, if Justin Moore would have been there for that game, think that they would have won, and then they ended up winning, the UCLA game without him. But defensively, they played very well. There's a lot of moving parts for UCLA. They have a freshman point guard in Sebastian Mack. They bring in Lazar Stefanovic from Utah. But you think about everybody that they've lost. They lost Tiger Campbell. They lost Jaime Jaquez. They lost a David Singleton who could come in and shoot for them. They lost so many vets from last year's team and so many contributors from
Amari
last
Bailey
year's
too.
Amari Bailey. And it's all these like kind of international guys and all these freshmen coming in. And all the guys like Will McClendon and Dylan Andrews that were reserves last year having to step in for UCLA. So there's still going to be a good team under Mick Cronin. There's a lot of moving parts here. It's definitely not, the last 2-3 years of UCLA teams that he's had, but still a really good Power 5 conference opponent to get a win against. Well, all those moving parts, they locked them up offensively, especially in the half court. They're still kind of finding their way. The Bruins are, but really good second half from Villanova. They had to have that. I like what they do, loading up their non-conference schedule with opportunities to get wins. But you look at what they've done. They have a loss to Drexel. Again, not like that's the end of the world. A loss to Penn. I don't think that loss to St. Joseph's is going to look bad in the grand scheme of things. But to lose to Penn and lose to Drexel, there's certainly blemishes on their resume, and they needed a win like that because we saw what happened last year. They had a couple bad losses early. And even though it's like, hey, they beat Oklahoma, who was kind of a fringe tournament team, they had a win against Creighton. They had a win at Xavier. It's that early non-conference that can kind of set you behind the eight ball when you have to go through the Big East Gauntlet. So I thought it was a very good win for them Saturday. Now they have a long break going into the Creighton game, but it was against a non-conference opponent. Again, not the UCLA teams of the last couple of years that made Sweet 16s. One team made a Final Four, but a really, really good win for Villanova nonetheless. They did it without Justin Moore too. Jordan Longino had another good game. He's quietly been Villanova's third leading scorer, and after Dixon and Moore, probably their most consistent player. So without Justin Moore to get a win against a scrappy team like Mick Cronin's bunch, really, really good win for Villanova. I do want to point out, though, and as much as I'm a Mick Cronin fan, in the post-game presser, when he was talking about Dembona not having as many rebounds as he wanted him to have, he was like, it's not like Eric Dixon's a great athlete, and Tyler Burton just played 4 years at Richmond. I really like Mick Cronin, kind of some loser energy from him to like discredit the players on the other team that played well.
Yeah.
Just want to throw that out there because I'm a huge Mick Cronin fan.
Yeah.
Really like what he was doing. He was like the fifth option at UCLA when they tried to get Calipari. They tried to get Rick Barnes, hired Mick Cronin, and people are like, oh, he's the fifth option, whatever. Guy made a Final Four. Big fan of him. Not a fan of what he said at the post-game presser afterwards. But in totality, Villanova had to have that one. And
Yeah, that's a little bit of loser energy. I actually didn't know that. I guess I was a little uninformed there with that, and I'm a little surprised because I think Mick Cronin's an incredible coach. I don't think he would stoop to that level of undermining the other players on the other team, especially a program as good as Villanova. I know maybe not the last couple of years they haven't been as good, but yeah, that's a little disappointing. But listen, that was an important game for them to help them get back on track. Obviously, the Big Five Classic and Big Five schedule in general did not do them any favors. They didn't do themselves favors in those games, but they didn't play well. So this game was really important for them to get back on track. So good on them. I'm also thankful you picked them because you didn't pick the team I thought you were going to pick, and now the team that I'm going to be picking, and obviously that's going to be the St. Joe's Hawks. How could you not? Am I right? Fresh off of the Big Five win, there's a chance for a letdown spot. There's a team that, I don't want to be mean, but I will be fair. They haven't won a ton in the Billy Lang era. Obviously, the record coming into the season was what it was. And you never know what can happen after winning something as emotional as the Big Five, especially when you have a lot of guys from the area on that team, or at least that have been around the area now for a few years, some of those upperclassmen. But they hosted Princeton, who, if they had won this game, decent chance they would have been ranked. Very decent chance they would have been ranked. Hawks ended up winning at home, 74-70. And it's just continuation of what we saw in the Big Five and a continuation of what we've seen ever since that Commerce loss. I mean, coming off that loss, they played Kentucky extremely well at Rupp, and then now they've won 5 straight, including winning the Big Five and beating a team that is as close to ranked as you could possibly get. And they got a vote in this week's top 25 ranking, which might not be a lot to some people, but it is something. So really good on the Hawks, and especially Eric Reynolds. Obviously, he is the catalyst. Lynn Greer is, I don't want to say he's a glue guy, but he's definitely the X factor. He's the one that I think brings everything together for them. And they're doing this all without Kreese too. Anthony Finkley's been starting. Kasper Klasic's still been coming off the bench. May not be the most ideal possible lineup for this team because obviously, we've heard a lot about what Kreese can be. We've seen it in a few games. He's been battled some injuries so far this season, so we haven't seen him a ton or even fully healthy, it seems like. So that possibility for when he comes back is exciting, adding that big body in there. But they've been playing really, really good basketball with and without him. And the guard play too has been incredible. And we've talked about Xavier Brown a lot. It's been fun to watch. And if you're a Hawks fan, obviously we've talked about it already, but this is a good time. This is a good time right now. So that team is streaking in the best way possible, and you love to see it. All right, Cope. Why don't we get a little bit of on the flip side of this, a little disappointing action here. Not that there's been a ton of disappointment in the Big Five. I mean, generally so far this year, it's been pretty solid. But if there's anything, any team, any player, anything you've seen so far that maybe you want to see step up as we get closer to the new year and into conference play, what would you like to see?
Yeah, I mean you're right that there hasn't really been there's not a bad team necessarily in the Big Five record wise. There's not like a 2-9 right now. There's not like a definitive like damn they're one of the worst teams in Division One and on in their conference. There's really not a team like that. I would say the only team maybe is Drexel. But they've played a pretty hard non-conference. I mean, look at they played 3 games just this month, and it's not they for the rest of the month. They're home against Albany. They're playing Penn State Allegheny, who ESPN had to change the name because they spelled it wrong the first time. They spelled Allegheny with an A and not an E. And then they're going to play at Bryant. But look at who they played this month. Number 18 Villanova, Big Five Classic. And then they went to Princeton and they went to West Virginia. So they're 1-2 this month, which I think they would gladly take. But I just look at their schedule and it's like the LaSalle game, the Temple game could have went either way. I really think they should have beat Old Dominion. Barely squeaked by against Winthrop. But look, these city games, the Big Five games are closely contested. And then they just played 3 really hard games. They got paid probably very handsomely to go play West Virginia. And they had to play Princeton, who going into that game was 9-0. Or it was 8-0 going into that game. So I guess that's one team. Like, it's just kind of hard to call them a disappointment. They're 5-5 right now. But like I said, like there's maybe a game or two where I could be like, well, I felt like they could have won that one. But like the 3 teams I just listed that they played this month, like that's a really, really tough stretch there for a CAA team. And how about the CAA? You just had UNC Wilmington win at Kentucky. Like that league's not bad at all. But then again, with Drexel and other things, you can't really say you're disappointed because what matters is a conference.
Right.
That's the one thing that matters.
They're not an at-large team. They will
very
never.
rarely. I mean, look at how good Charleston was last year. And if they didn't win their conference tournament,
They wouldn't have been.
they wouldn't have got it. And they won 30 games.
Yeah.
It's just not a league where that happens.
No.
So the good thing about the Big Five is the teams have been performing well enough this year. There's not really disappointment. So if I had to nitpick, I guess I could say Drexel because I think they're better than 5-5, and I think they can contest at the top of this conference. I've said that and in our preview, and in a couple times this year because I thought they would play for the Big Five championship, and I thought they would beat LaSalle in their opening night, but couldn't get it done. But it was 2 close games, 2 close city games. They lost in overtime to Old Dominion. And then they played some tough teams this month. So that's me having to nitpick because unlike last year, which is one of the worst years in the history of the Big Five, those teams made it to the tournament. I think for the first time since the '70s.
Yeah.
You know, to choose a 5-5 team that's played some tough opponents. That's me having to nitpick if I really pick a team that I expect more from. Because like I can't pick LaSalle, they're 8-2.
Right.
You know, Penn just beat Howard. They've also played some tough opponents. They upset Villanova. Like it's kind of I have to nitpick here. I'm really gonna pick a team that's like, oh, well, they need to do that. So unfortunately, it has to be Drexel because I think that they're better than that 5-5 record.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of for this topic. Even though I don't think there's a real team that has been disappointing, I think that's probably the optics of it's probably the easiest answer, just because they were picked among the best teams in the CAA or the best team in the CAA. If some people definitely thought, but we're also not in CAA play yet. Like you mentioned, like we're not there. They're playing the non-conference. Non-conference is always a little weird. Whether it's scheduling games against really good teams like they've played, or traveling to different places that are weird, or playing different teams you're not used to. You really can tell a team once you get into conference play. Even though non-conference wins in November and December are important, especially when you get into that NCAA discussion. Not that, like we mentioned, colonial teams unfortunately aren't really in that at-large conversation, but it's still, they are 5-5. They do have the worst record in the Big Five. So I get what you're saying. For me, I'm probably going to nitpick even more than you, and there's going to be a fan base that's not going to be very happy with me with what I'm going to say, but I'm actually going to go the opposite of you, and I'm going to pick Villanova for the team that's been a little bit disappointing to me. And not because the talent's not there, and not because they don't have some good wins. Obviously, the battle for Atlantis was huge. It's the consistency is what concerns me. I mean, obviously, they go to Atlantis, they win. But then they also are 0-3 in the Big Five, which they are the most talented team in the Big Five. I don't think they should have been 0-3. St. Joe's, like you mentioned previously, that's going to look a lot better for them in the long run. Well, we've talked about St. Joe's. And then also, they were leading against Kansas State, and they ended up losing that game in overtime. I know it's a tough place to play. Still, I think that's a game that they probably should have won. And then you beat UCLA, which is obviously a good result there. Like you mentioned, also not the same UCLA teams we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, but still a good result. But going forward, it's the consistency is what we need to see. Because going into the year, this team was ranked. This team had second weekend and Final Four aspirations, if not championship aspirations, obviously. But there's only a few teams I think that were really, really in that conversation going into the year. They just need to show that they are that team, because I think the talent's there. We've talked about the transfers. We've talked about some of the young guys. Oh, pretty much every young guy except for Cam Whitmore, who came back and was expected to be in a role this year. Specifically, Mark Armstrong, I think he needs to show a little bit more. I think he's been slightly disappointing. And I'll ask you if you agree after I'm done. But I think he can definitely have room for improvement. There's just something's not quite there yet. Maybe they have a gear they can flip it to. I hope they do, and I think they can. But we're gonna wait to see it. And Big East play is coming soon, and it's once again projecting to be one of the best leagues in the country. It's not going to be easy. You have the defending national champions. You have a top 10 team in Marquette. You have a top 10 team in Creighton, even though they just got blown out by UNLV. But still, really good basketball team. I want to see more. I think they can show more. It will be interesting to see once they get into the Big East play, but I think that's a team that can step it up, and I think they will, but only time will tell. But back to my point about Mark Armstrong, and I guess Villanova in general. What are your kind of thoughts on them so far, and him so far?
Yeah, well, Mark Armstrong, yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that, he's disappointed this year because I thought he could be a breakout player. I've said that multiple times. He could be a breakout player to the point where he could raise the ceiling of how good the team can be. Like he showed flat, he's very fast in transition, good at guarding the ball. And I just want more from him because like when we talked with Joe about what's missing from Villanova, feels like they're missing a real true point guard that I feel he could be. I thought he could fulfill that role this year. Whether it was he started a bunch of games this year, and he played last year. Like he'll he plays a lot, whether that he starts or not. Like he plays a lot. And I thought he could be that assist guy for them. He's only averaging 1.4 assists this year. I thought he could be more of a facilitator. You want Justin Moore to score. That's what he's there for. And I thought he could be more of that table setter, that guy that can get into the defense and create for others that Villanova needs so badly that you're seeing now. Like they really don't have they have guys that could create their own shot, that could get to the hoop, but it's okay. Who's creating for others? Who's kicking out to shooters that they have so many of? And I thought he could be that guy, just hasn't been there yet. And another thing is he was not good at shooting last year. 24.6%. He is at 17% this year.
From three.
Yes. I mean, it's gotten worse. And the thing that, Villanova gives them, Villanova is even under, especially under Jay Wright, they gave players the confidence to shoot. They gave them the green light. You're going to shoot it with confidence. You're going to practice that shot, and you're going to shoot it in the game, shoot it with confidence. Like you can put it up there. But it's getting to the point where, a catch and shoot from him, is probably not your best way. But here's the thing. Second half of that game, he made a couple jump shots where he shot Baker. He took a dribble inside the 3-point line and knocked it down. And I think he just needs to see a couple go through to get some confidence there. And I thought that was nice because he, even after missing some, he wasn't hesitant. He wasn't looking to pass the ball when he had it. If it was there, he was going to take it. They just have to go in the hoop. But I thought that was nice that, he saw a couple go through. And then there was a play where he had a charge called on him. After he hit a couple, he drove down the court on a fast break, got the charge call, like I said. And even though it sucked that it was a turnover, I was like, I like that he's being aggressive. I like that he's now he now wants to score and is confident because he saw a couple go to the hoop. So the jump shooting has to be there. It hasn't. It's gotten worse. Matter of fact, year two. I just want more from him as like a pass first guy because I think his speed and his quickness to be able to get by people, get a piece of the paint, like I think he could do wonders for this offense. And I think you're right that this team still has a gear to get to. I don't think they're in their final form yet. I think they're going to get a lot better as the season goes on. They get in Big East play. They're just too talented to not make the tournament and to sputter like this. And they've kept it close in these games. But when they're about to start that gauntlet, they have the Creighton game. I think they have one more non-conference game, and then they're going to start. Obviously playing all their Big East games as conference play gets in there. They always kind of tease you with conference play a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, they're going to get right into it. They're going to play fall.
No, they start on the 20th. Yeah,
yeah.
At
You
Creighton.
can get into how much of a disaster that team is when that game comes about. But yeah,
But listen,
I
they're
expected a lot more
after.
from
I didn't mean to interrupt, but for their schedule, they're at Creighton, which will obviously be a very tough game. But then at DePaul, against Xavier, home against St. John's, home against DePaul. So yeah, St. John's will be tough. Xavier will always be tough, but those are very winnable games. So even no matter what the Creighton result is, if you start conference play through your 4-1, it's a good start. That will help build confidence, even if it's against teams that maybe haven't been as good historically, at least in the last 20 years or so. That will help a lot,
right
with their confidence.
I think when we get into Big East play, we're gonna realize that this league is way more top heavy than we think it is. Because obviously last year, look, Purdue's the champion. Marquette was awesome. Xavier made the Sweet 16 in Sean Miller's first year. It was and Providence, Providence made the tournament, the whole Ed Cooley situation. They as I say, they crawled to the finish line instead of sprinting through it. And I feel like when teams finish 2-5 or something like that, and they like get one of the last at-large spots, like that's a team you definitely want to fade. You want to fade a cold team going into the tournament. Villanova was at least a fringe. Not that they were ever really going to make any noise if they made the tournament, but they were kind of hanging around there. Creighton was really good. They're very good again this year. I mean, prior to they're going to fall because they lost to UNLV, but right now, UConn's ranked fifth, Marquette's seventh, Creighton's eighth. Like they have three teams in the top 10, but then it's
But
like
then
St.
outside of
John's has
that,
been choppy.
like,
Xavier,
yeah,
I don't think is as good. Xavier, well, no,
Butler's like on the bubble right now,
Butler's having they're 8-2. They're having a very good season.
but they're still
Butler's
like
having a very, very good
they're
season.
not a top. Like I still think that's a team Villanova can beat. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, like that's certainly a team I think they can beat. DePaul is an absolute dumpster fire. Somehow not worse than Louisville, but they're a dumpster fire. They're horrible. They've lost countless spy games just this year. Providence, I would like to see them play more because they played Kansas State and they lost in overtime. They beat Georgia, who is a ton of transfers and is figuring it out. But besides that, they don't have a good win yet, and Oklahoma smoked them. And Oklahoma's very good this year, but I want to see more Providence to see if they're real or they're fake. And then Georgetown's bad. Like Georgetown's not going to be a player this year under Ed Cooley. They're not going to be very good. I'll
And
tell you what,
Seton Hall is usually tough too, so that'll
they're
be a challenge, but not like
I don't
a
love,
crazy
but
challenge.
and I don't even love them this year. I don't think they're one of
No,
the
I just think
they're
Shaheen will
not
have
very
them playing really tough, and that won't be an easy game, but they're definitely the more talented team.
yeah. You know what it's gonna be.
Yeah,
It's gonna be a hard fought game, probably like in the I mean, when I
60s.
was at the Nova Seton Hall game at Wells Fargo, I think it ended 58-54.
Yeah,
And then they went up to um for the Prudential Center, I think it was 76-73. Like it's gonna be a close game. It's gonna be a tough game. Um, but I'm not a fan of them either. Like I think Villanova slides in there potentially as like the fourth team
yeah.
in the Big East right now. Like I really liked St. John's on paper, but they got it meshed. They got to figure it out. Hasn't happened yet. Like they just lost to Boston College.
Yeah.
So they still got to figure it out. But yeah, Villanova I think slides in there as like that fourth team. Um, that's assuming that Butler doesn't continue the path that they're on. I think they'll start to kind of flatten out a little bit. And then with Providence, we're going to see if they're a contender or a pretender. We're going to see. They don't have a good win yet, but then they're going to start Big East play. They're going to have an opportunity for a bunch. We're going to see if they're for real or not. Which to me, kind of leaning towards they're not for real right now. So I think Nova slides in there as that potential fourth team. And have a lot of opportunities for ranked wins here and like quality ranked wins too. And then we'll see where that puts them. But yet they can't lose to DePaul like they did last year, and they can't have a close game like they did at home versus Georgetown.
Yeah. It's things they're gonna need to figure out to get that second gear, because the teams, those championship level teams, or at least like playoff level teams, and talking about other sports, those teams don't lose those kind of games. They take care of business against the teams that are inferior to them. And then when it gets to the teams that are as good as them or better than them, we'll see. We'll figure it out. Will they upset one of Creighton or Marquette or UConn? I think so. At least one of those games. I don't expect them to go 0-6 in those games. But the question is not whether they'll beat those teams. It's whether they'll put their foot down against the teams that aren't better than them. So for the DePauls of the world, for Xavier, for Georgetown, probably even Seton Hall too, like we mentioned, like those are not teams you should lose to. Maybe Providence, maybe Butler, because those are some solid teams too. St. John's, I think they should beat, but I wouldn't be shocked because Pitino's real good if you haven't heard as a head coach. But like this should be where they kick it into gear and figure it out. So will that happen? Only time will tell. But it will be a little bit of a gauntlet up top at the Big East. But then after that, it's open. So we'll see what happens there. All right. Speaking of some games coming up, Villanova, that Creighton game, by the way, that's not until the 20th, like you mentioned. So a little break there. Penn is also not playing this weekend. So we got 4 games this weekend. Couple good ones, couple at ones. So we're gonna pick some games here. I almost knocked over my water. We're gonna pick some games here. We'll start with LaSalle traveling down to Coral Gables to take on number 24 Miami. Cope, LaSalle's been off to a good start, but they're probably facing one of their toughest tests, if not their toughest test. Well, not the toughest test, I think Duke was, but one of their toughest tests this year in this Miami team. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do think Miami is going to win this game. Really, really tough opponent. Another Big E. No, excuse me, not Big East. Another
We're talking
ACC
a lot
bye
of Big
game.
East here.
Yeah, another ACC bye game for the Explorers. Only 2 losses for this Miami team, and they just got blown out at the Barclays Center by Colorado, who I wasn't sure was real or fake. Seems like Colorado is making a case to be a tournament team. And then they lost to Kentucky by 20 at Rupp in the ACC SEC Challenge. Obviously, that Kentucky team's really good offense to play against. The second best 3-point shooting team in America, the 11th best free throw shooting team, 39th at 2-point percentage, according to KenPom, and they defend the 3-point line well. They have the 9th best 3-point defense. Opponents are shooting 26.5% against them. But I mean, that is amazing. That truly is amazing. Not a bunch of crazy wins for them. They have a win against Kansas State on a neutral floor, win against Georgia, win against UCF. They have a win against Notre Dame, who's in a rebuilding year. But a lot of guys that can hurt you offensively on this team. Luga Poplar, Philly native, he's been really good in the absence of course, Isaiah Wong. They still have Nigel Pack, who can build up, can shoot the ball, and it's one of the best scorers in the ACC. I think the guy that's going to give him problems, though, is Norshadomir. Transferred in from Arkansas State, not last year, last year was his first year there. He's only 6'7". This guy is an absolute monster on the glass. Plays like a 7-footer. He's strong. He's got big shoulders. Guy that's going to play with a lot of power down low. And even though he's going to be giving up size to Rokas, I do think that he's going to give him some problems. So really like this Miami team. They are ranked 24th right now. Took a bit of a tumble after getting blown out by Colorado, and then the Miami loss, where they lost by double digits, doesn't it's not a bad loss by any means, but it's going to knock you down a little bit. But offensively, turn the ball over a little bit, 228th in turnover percentage, but when they shoot the ball and it goes in quite a bit of the time. One of the best offenses in the country, 28th in efficiency, according to KenPom. So really tough opponent, and they have to go down there too. They'll be feisty. They'll be competitive. Perhaps they keep it close in the first half, just like LaSalle did against Duke. But full game, definitely think the Hurricanes win.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there. Listen, as well as Fran Dunphy has these guys playing, it's much different when you go up against a ranked Power 5 team that made a Final Four last year. In return, not everybody, but a couple key pieces. So it will be a challenge. I do not think it will be particularly close, unfortunately. All I want to see out of LaSalle is some fight. I don't want them to be intimidated going down there and facing Jim Larranaga's crew. Show some fight. Every game is winnable. Every score starts at 0-0. So I hope that they go out with some tenacity. But ultimately, I do see Miami winning this game. So that's the one big game this weekend. The other big game this weekend, not that it's a ranked matchup or anything, but it is a rematch of last year, two teams that we see often. Obviously, one of them because they're Big 5 teams, so that don't pay attention to me partially. Temple at VCU. The Siegel Center will most likely be rocking for this one Saturday at 2 p.m. And the one thing that I'm really, really interested in this matchup, and I was just looking on KenPom, the turnovers battle. So VCU this is interesting. According to KenPom, they are 331st in offensive turnover out of the 362 teams in Division I college basketball. And then defensively, they don't turn the ball over. They don't create turnovers a ton. They're 246th, whereas Temple. And I noticed this was a good thing for Temple. I didn't realize how good they were. They are 10th in KenPom in the country in offensive turnover percentage, just 13.3%. And then in defensive turnover percentage, they're 104th, which is still solid, 19.1%. So the turnover battle is going to be very interesting for the Owls here. If they continue to take care of a ball against a team that does not force many turnovers as it is, obviously will create a lot more possessions. They're not obviously a very efficient team, Temple, right now. So hopefully they get more possessions to be able to get them more points. And number two, if they can continue to force VCU into these turnover problems, that will also help as well. So I think it'll be a very close game. VCU comes in as the better team by a little bit. I think Temple wins this one, though. I think they've been playing pretty well. I think this Temple team, and it's something I've noticed, I think maybe the ceiling's not as high this year, especially with some of the talent that left that we've talked about, but I think the floor is higher, which is really important. Adam Fisher's got these guys playing really, really well. They're consistent. They don't get too high. They don't get too low. And I think going into an environment like this, going against a team that's pretty good in VCU perennially, and this year as well, they're pretty solid. I think that matters a lot. And I'm going to take the Owls on the road here to beat this VCU team. But Cope, what do you think?
So I'm a little torn on this because you are going into a very tough road environment in the A10, one of the tougher ones, kind of in this area, I guess, in the Northeast, going to the Eagle Center. Really, really new team here though. And you look at their schedule and who they lost though. They lost to Iowa State, they lost to Boise State. Not bad loss by any means. They lost in overtime. They pushed Memphis to overtime and they lose to them. But they lost at home to Norfolk State, and then they open the year losing to McNeese by double digits. Who McNeese is going to
They've been playing well.
pass the Southland competition.
They've been
Will
playing
Wade
well.
is now back. Yeah, but it's still it is a game where they paid McNeese to show up.
Yeah.
But like I said, they're going to smash the South. They're easily far and away the best team in the Southland. They're going to represent them in the tournament, barring a total disaster in the conference tournament. Will Wade just came back, but he didn't coach that game. But regardless, kind of been up and down. They beat Penn State, but I think it's funny that Mike Rhodes takes the Penn State job. The guy that comes in to replace him, they beat them down at Disney World in that Thanksgiving MTE. But kind of been different than what I thought this VCU team would be. Defensively, I did not think they would be significantly better offensively according to KenPom. 55th best defense, 141st best offense. Now, Sean Bairstow is out for them, has an injury that is keeping him out. Hopefully not until the end of this month at the turn of the new year, but has kept him out at least up to this point. And he would have been one of their biggest offensive threats. But Max Scholgo comes over from Utah State, who followed Ryan Odom, leads him in scoring. Zeb Jackson, one of the few guys that decided to stay in the wake of Mike Rhodes leaving. He averages almost 15 points a game. They added Jason Nelson from Richmond, who probably some dirty business going on there. If you're going to move in the same city, in the same conference, you're going to move from Richmond to VCU. Maybe I think somebody definitely poached him with some money there. But he's averaging over a steal a game and almost 10 points. So they have some guards here that can score and are pretty good. But I think Temple could maybe get him here. Need to know what the status of Jaleel White is. Hopefully he can get up and play this game. So they're going to need him. But tough place to have to go into. Going down there to the Siegel Center. But Kyle, I'm going to agree with you. I want to see them take a step up in competition because they played St. Joe's pretty close. They played Ole Miss very close. They've also lost to Columbia at home. But I want to see them. They've played a pretty weak schedule up to this point. Temple has. I want to see them take a step up. Their next two games at VCU, then they're going to fly to Hawaii for the Diamond Head Classic and play Nevada that we'll talk about. But I want to see them get up for this game. I think that they can. I'm going to agree with you. They could sneak out a win here.
All right. I could definitely see it happening. And it's not going to be easy. Siegel Center is tougher than a weekend at your in-laws. according to some people, John Rothstein. Yeah, it'll be interesting, but I do think Temple ultimately comes out on top. And that's pretty much all we got here, Cope. Love talking ball again. It's been a minute with you. So any final thoughts here before we sign off?
I hope my voice held up. I could feel it kind of fading a little bit
It
with
did.
the shortness of breath I still have. But yeah, good to talk ball again. Should be a good weekend this weekend. And then, hey, conference play is going to start. Like I said, Temple's going to be in Hawaii for the Diamond Head Classic. They're going to play Nevada, could potentially play TCU, have a couple of power conference games there. So, yeah, looking forward to next week, too. There's some good games to review this weekend. And this conference play starts. A lot of good stuff coming your way next week, too.
A lot of great stuff coming your way next week. Absolutely. And also there's a chance, I was gonna say for my final thoughts, that I will be at the St. Joe's and Iona game, which we didn't quite talk about. I think that will be a St. Joe's victory there. I know we were supposed to cover it together, which is unfortunate. But you rest, you recover. I might be going with Shelby and her family. We have yet to determine, but either way, that will be an interesting one. And yeah, and at the time of this recording, it is the last night of Hanukkah. So happy Hanukkah to all my fellow Jewish friends out there. Hope it was happy and healthy for you all. And yeah, that's pretty much all we got. So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we very, very much appreciate your love and support. And listen, we're about to get into that fun time of year. Listen, it's the holiday season right now. You go enjoy with your family. There's some ball on for sure, but more important things right now. And then once January 2nd hits, because obviously got to get the bowl games out of the way. Once January 2nd hits, it's conference play, it's college basketball, it's the nitty gritty, and you're about 10 weeks away from Selection Sunday. So we're almost there, Cope. Got to get through this first, and then it's the nitty gritty. So we will be all here to break down for you guys as well. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Big5Pod. And make sure you listen to, our audio only versions on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And with that being said, we will see you guys next week.